in the United States, there is a history of slavery, as I think most people know. So, for a very long time, black people were brought from Africa in the slave trade to the colonies at the time, or what is now the United States, to work as slaves. Now, for a very long time, obviously that meant a very large gap between black people and white people. One group works for the other, one group is free, one group is not. One group owns the other group, okay? And so that's a pretty dark past when you think about it, right? Now, obviously, that has been abolished a long time ago, 1865. Basically, that ended with something called the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. Slavery ended. But after that, that wasn't the end of problems. After that, especially in the southern states of the United States, there were a lot of issues, a lot of problems, a lot of racist attitudes from white people toward black people. So that might have been actual violence against black people. That might have been rules to make it unfair for black people to live comfortably, right? So that might be some things like Jim Crow laws are these laws that made it more difficult for black people to participate in, for example, elections. And segregation. You might have heard of the story of Rosa Parks, who is a famous story, started the civil rights movement in the United States because she had to sit in the black section of a bus in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955, I believe. And the law was you have to get up if a white passenger says get up. And a white passenger said get up because the white section was full. She didn't. She said no. So she was arrested. She was sent to jail. And then that started the boycott of the bus system in Montgomery, Alabama. And then that started the what's called Civil Rights Revolution, which led to more rights and more equality for black people in the United States. But that doesn't mean things are perfect even now. Even now, there is still racism. There are still deep issues. Now, it's much better, obviously, and I think it's getting better and better and better, but there's still racism, and there is that dark past. So that's the background. Why do I say all of that before answering this question? Well, this word, which we call the N-word, is a single thing that sort of represents all of that darkness that I talked about in the past. And so if a white person says it, and I would say not if a white person says it, because maybe someone might say it in the context of education. I'm not going to say it, but someone might say it in the context of education or talking about it and its background and its history and why it has the meaning it has. And I think that's fine. I think it's more about the intention. Someone who says it with the intention of hate toward black people, that is extremely insulting. That is a terrible thing to say, about as bad as it can get. And there are people still who are racist toward black people who use that word in that way to convey their hatred toward black people. That's a fact. So the interesting thing that has happened then is that in the black community, or at least parts of the black community, and in a lot of hip-hop music and a lot of rap music, you hear that word used among black people. So it's sort of like taking this thing, this word, which is a symbol or a hateful sound, and taking it on yourself and using it to sort of release the hatred from it in a way. And so in parts of the black community, especially in hip-hop music, you hear it a lot. And it's used more like in a sort of friendly way. But that doesn't mean that the white people can go around saying it, usually. And I would argue, I would say, maybe some people can in some situations when it's related to sort of education, or they don't mean it in a hateful way, right? So it's interesting how words change, and it is definitely an important part of every language that words change their meaning based on history. Words change their meaning based on the events that happen in popular culture, in music, and that's something that we've seen with this word. And who knows, maybe in 50 years, everyone will be able to say this, and there will be no longer any negativity attached to it. So it'll be very interesting to see how the word evolves over time. But it has definitely evolved in the last, whenever it started. Maybe it was, I think it started probably 100 years ago, maybe more. I don't know the exact history of this specific word. If you're ever curious about the history of words, you can just Google it. This word, and then search the word etymology, and then you can find out the exact history of the word. So I hope that answers your question. Your question was, why do black people get insulted by it? And I can't speak for black people because I'm white, but I can say that it's because of the history, and I would not say that it is insulting in every situation. It's more about the intention behind the use of it. I've never used it, but that's just because I don't want to go there, if that makes sense. So hopefully that answers your question.